In a day and age where everything has to do with devices and technology, do you need another one just to read, or can you use the iPad you've been using for the past few years? Well, I have both devices and I put them to the test so you didn't have to. So let's get on with the video. If you're new to the channel and love everything tech as much as I do, consider subscribing. I'd greatly appreciate it. So to start us off, let's talk about first impressions and picking up each device. The Kindle feels like it only exists for one thing. You pick it up and there's really nothing else to do on it except read. It's extremely lightweight, there's no apps, no notification, and it definitely feels boring, but in a really good way. It feels like an actual book would. The iPad, on the other hand, is better at almost everything. It has a much bigger screen, it has color, it's much faster and a lot smoother. But that's also kind of the problem. The iPad has a beautiful screen, which is definitely the biggest thing the Kindle lacks. It's also easier to highlight and type notes. You also have the options of using the Kindle app, the Apple Books app, PDFs, or whatever it may be. But at the same time, you can also use YouTube, Safari, Messages, and TikTok, which brings me to my second point. Distractions. The biggest difference wasn't the screen or color or the apps I could use. It was what my brain expected from each device. For the iPad, it's pretty weird to explain, but I felt that reading on it felt temporary, like something I couldn't do for hours on end. I always felt like I was doing something that was a little uncomfortable, or that I wasn't fully immersing myself in the book, knowing it was just a random app open next to my TikTok or iMessage app. As soon as you unlock the iPad, the first thing you see is other apps. And while you're reading, notifications can be pretty common and very annoying. And while you can obviously set the iPad to D&D, it still feels that other entertainment is just one tap away. The Kindle, on the other hand, felt like reading a real book, since there's no real escape route. It's slow, limited, and boring. But I felt that nowadays, where there's dopamine hits and stimulus going on every second, it was nice to switch from a dopamine machine like the iPad to something grounded and plain like the Kindle. In my opinion, the lack of features on the Kindle became its strongest one. Now for the comfort test, I read for at least half an hour to an hour every day, alternating on each device to see what was most comfortable. I felt that the Kindle, due to its e-ink screen, was a lot softer on the eyes. It isn't blinding even at full brightness, and the matte screen is heavily underrated. I guess if you buy a matte screen protector for the iPad, you could get similar results, but I don't know if that's something most people want to do. The battery situation is night and day different as well. While the Kindle's battery could easily last weeks on a single charge, my iPad in just a few hours was already dead. The weight is also a pretty big factor. I used the iPad Air 5 for this test, and it's a big device compared to the Kindle. With the iPad being 461 grams and the Kindle being 158 grams, the difference is quite big, especially if you take into account the case, the Apple Pencil, or other accessories that could come with the iPad. The outdoors test is another one that the Kindle runs away with very easily. The Kindle's matte screen and e-ink display just don't get affected by sunlight in any way, whereas the iPad will dim completely and leave you squinting trying to read your book by the pool or the beach. When using the iPad, I felt as if I wasn't truly disconnecting. I felt that I was still upping my screen time, receiving the harsh blue light, and being one tap away from TikTok and YouTube. The iPad isn't bad at all for reading in certain scenarios, but in terms of comfort in everyday life, it just has to go to the Kindle. And before we move on, I'm going to take a second to talk about today's sponsor, Bandletic. Bandletic is a watch band company built for people who are constantly moving, whether that's training, going outside, walking, traveling, or just wearing your Apple Watch throughout the day. I think Apple Watch bands are one of those things people don't really think about until they start getting annoying, because the watch itself can be great, but if the band feels cheap, uncomfortable, too stiff, or just doesn't fit your day-to-day style, it kind of ruins the whole experience. What I like about Bandletic is that their bands have that more active, outdoor ready look, but they don't feel like something you can only wear to the gym. You can wear them casually outside, and you can wear them while working, and it still looks clean. Not to mention that the quality is the best there is. And speaking of, comfort is probably the biggest thing for me, because I don't want a watch band that I'm constantly noticing on my wrist. And this one feels light, secure, and pretty easy to forget about, which is usually the best thing a watch band can do. It gives the Apple Watch a slightly more rugged feel without making it look too bulky or over the top. So if you already like your Apple Watch, but you want it to feel a little more comfortable, more active, and honestly just a little less boring, Bandletic is definitely worth checking out. I'll leave their link and discount code in the description. And with that being said, let's continue with the video. As for typing notes, highlighting, and studying your book, the iPad has a pretty clear win. Typing notes using the split screen feature, reading PDFs, textbooks, screenshots, using the Apple Pencil, and doing general research is much easier, and it's pretty encouraged. The split screen feature was actually a very useful one for writing notes at the same time as you're reading. Highlighting is also easier in general since the screen is so much quicker. However, the Kindle is definitely better if you're just a person looking to read your book and maybe highlight a few simple quotes or note take on another book or device. Next up, I wanted to analyze how quick it was to get into a reading habit and then stick to it, which is arguably the most important part about choosing which device to read on. With the iPad, I could definitely read, but I had to resist doing other things. With the Kindle, I didn't really have to resist anything because there wasn't much else to do. I definitely felt that reading length on both was about the same. It was really more about the time I had given myself to read, and if you're strict with your timing and reading habit, reading on both lengthwise went pretty well. However, starting to read it definitely felt easier on the Kindle. I caught myself a few times entering my iPad and having notifications on the lock screen before I started reading, which I ended up entering into and forgetting about reading for a good 5 to 10 minutes. What did affect the habit in a pretty big way though was the other factors. The battery life, for example. One thing I don't think people mention about reading on an iPad is that many times during the day you'll use the iPad for something else. So you could have started the day with your iPad at 100%, but by the time it's 2 p.m. and you want to read a book, your battery could easily be highly depleted. And if you're at uni, on a bus, or you don't have a charger nearby, you're left wondering if you want to spend a few extra percentages of battery life on reading, or if you want to save it to be able to continue your work later on. Another thing that really affected the building a habit part was the size. There's many times during a day where we don't have a cozy corner to read in or an hour of free time. Sometimes we want to catch up on reading in the bus, a hospital lobby, or at a simple coffee store, and carrying around an 11-inch iPad isn't the easiest thing to do in the world. The Kindle, being much smaller and more lightweight, means it can fit into any purse or even a back pocket, which I myself ended up doing many times. The Kindle's reading experience is just a lot more curated and precise. It's meant for reading, and you feel exactly that as soon as you open it up. Moving on to who should buy each one, I think you should buy the Kindle if you're a person who wants to read more books, which if you're curious about on why that happens, I'll have a video linked in the top right corner of this one. If you get distracted easily, the Kindle will also be the better option. If you want a digital feel but you still want to wind down from all the screens we see on a day-to-day, and if you're an avid reader, then in all those scenarios, the Kindle will be the best option for you. However, if you don't read much, you might not give too much use to your Kindle, and I wouldn't want you spending your hard-earned money on something you won't use. And I think for an iPad user, you should stick to it or get one if you need a multi-purpose machine and budget is slightly tight. If your priority is studying, homework, general work, or other things that aren't reading, then the iPad is more than good enough. If you only want an e-reader and your YouTube watching, Netflix watching, and other work things are done elsewhere, then it should be a no-brainer that a Kindle is the way to go. If you're still on the fence about buying the Kindle, I have many more videos on the topic which I recommend you check out. If there's any other videos you'd like me to do either about the iPad, the Kindle, or anything else, let me know and I'll gladly do so. If you like this video, leave a like, a comment, and subscribe. And since there's nothing left to be said, I'll see you all in the next one.